Blog Talk Radio.
When you're born in this world, you're given a ticket to the freak show. And when you're born in America, you're given a front row seat.
And the daylight was heavy with thunder, with the smell of the rain on the...
I'll tell you what I think. The cocksucking elite who own and run everything in this fucking country are selling it out from under us tomorrow.
Ain't it just like a human?
Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you.
Here comes that rainbow again.
There's dick jokes coming up. Please relax.
They got you by the balls.
Let's do this.
Oh, F you, freaks. F you. Freaks unite. Hello, 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 and welcome to the front row at the Freak Show. I am your host, as always, Steve Crafts, but of course you can call me Crafty, and I hope that I'm freaking broadcasting right now, to be honest with you. Just had some weird stuff happen with the Blog Talk Radio thing. I got disconnected, and then I couldn't hear my intro, and so hold on here a second. We're just going to test something here. Let's just, can we hear from Bill O'Reilly?
Fucking thing sucks!
All right, that was working. I didn't hear my intro. So, for that...
Fucking thing sucks!
Yeah, Bill. Yeah. All right. So, so I guess, and I see the countdown going on here, so I guess we are live. Sorry for that confusion. I assure you, I am just as confused as well. But hey, anyway, let's get this out of the way right here and now, because we did delay a little bit. But since we are broadcasting live here, please, if you got the urge or the itch, please call in, and the number to do so is 646-668-8756. Give us up a jingle here at the front row. And, one thing I've noticed so far, I've been very happy with the response and how many people are listening to the front row right now. It's much more than I expected. But most of that is people listening, after it's live, once it's archived. And so I realize that there are not a ton of you listening actually live, which makes it difficult to call in for sure. But if you happen to be one of those people that are listening live, please call in. I would love to hear from you. And the number again is 646-668-8756. I'll try to repeat that a few times as we go along. But anyway, hey, the title for this week's episode is Waking Up is Hard to Do. And before we get into that, let me tell you something else that's hard to do. And that's a freaking podcast, as I am slowly, painfully learning here. Seriously, freaks, I know I make it, sound easy and seamless. But this shit is hard, man, and especially for a guy like me right now. And I kind of bring it up on the heels of last week's episode where I wasn't, extremely happy about my time management and, deciding to go the route I did, talking about the Federal Reserve and 9/11. And, I ultimately don't think I really did 9/11 the justice that it deserves. Rest assured, going to be talking about it a little bit more later and wrapping that up and putting a bow on it. But, and then, But getting back to, the podcast not being an easy thing, the last thing I needed was to have my beginning there messed with. But, like this week, right, I actually literally came in today from 5 days of vacationing up in the great state of Maine. And let me be honest, I'm flat out not as ready as I would like to be or need to be here for this evening. But you know what? I was thinking about it. And I hope you appreciate the honesty. And ultimately, I hope that's why you do tune in, whether it's live or later on. And I hope it's why you'll continue to do so and tell your friends so I can grow this thing and make it like a full-time thing with more shows each week and start maybe getting some other freaks contributing and all that, Because in the end, I'm going to keep this real. I'm not going to try and bullshit you. I'm going to always try to tell it like I see it and give it to you the best way I can, and hopefully in a way that connects with you. And I'm hoping and thinking that this is, what is and even more what can be that makes the front row different from every other flipping show out there. Okay? So with that said, actually did want to try something a little bit new here for the front row, and it's kind of I'm thinking how I'd like to start the show off every week, and that's a little something called the front row scuttlebutt. And I'll be honest, the only reason I call it that is because I like to say the word scuttlebutt. But no, I'd like to dedicate some time each week, talking about the current news and stories that are making the headlines. So why don't we do that, okay? And first up, oh yeah, did you hear this? I don't know if you did. You might not have caught this if you weren't paying attention, and I'm sorry to be breaking the news, Robin Williams died. That's right. Holy shit, I know you might not have heard it. I don't really have much to say outside of that, but I was just floored and continue to be floored with what we get caught up in as far as our news. Robin Williams, good guy, good actor, good comedian. That's it, man, And to see some of the things I saw posted on Facebook, I mean, people were taking this like it was a member of their own family and that they knew him and that he was their uncle or their father or their son. And just truly, truly remarkable with our obsession, with Hollywood and the like. And, again, not that it's not worth a blurb or something. The man certainly affected a lot of, had some good things to say and did some good things. But a lot of it, when you think about his movies, that stuff was written for him. He was just an actor. Anyway, found it interesting. And you know what? Actually, you might not have heard this. And I'm just remembering it now. But, another soul taken just recently was the great Ron Palillo. That's right, Horshack. Went to the great principal's office in the sky this week. But the other thing, moving along, I wanted to. I happened to notice this while I was on vacation, and our Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel, was actually quoted as saying, "The world is exploding." Yes. Apparently Chuck noted this in his talk with Marines, and this is what he wanted to say. Quote, we're in more countries involved in more operations with more partners all over the world than we've ever been in. Now that said, as I've said, with that rebalance, which will continue, We are committed to do that. We're not retreating from any part of the world. Great powers can't pick and choose what challenges and threats they're going to deal with. There is no power on earth like the United States of America. No country is great enough, powerful enough to deal with all these threats and challenges alone in the world today. They're too big, too complex. The world is too complicated. Whether they're cyber threats, which are relatively new, but are just as real and deadly and lethal as anything we've ever dealt with. Obviously, what's going on in North Korea, China's behavior in the South China Sea, East China Sea, you mentioned Russia's actions in Ukraine, North Africa, the Middle East today, every part of that world is troubled under great stress. Wow. And this is like, I'm sure not picked up on your local newscast, but, let's see if we can put that through the front row translator if we can, Yes, thanks to us fucking with every single other country and stealing all their natural resources at any human cost, we now must spend hundreds of billions of taxpayers' dollars further intruding in other countries around the world and protecting ourselves from these people who surprisingly do not like us. Thank you, Mr. Hagel. Anyway, our last story here on the front row, scuttlebutt, which, is actually pretty big news when you think about it. But look, it is another new war for America. That's right. Iraq? No, well, yes, but no. Ukraine? Again, yes, but that's not the answer. Russia? Not yet, which can also be said for Iran, Syria, North Korea, and China. But for now, at least, those are all a no. Where might this war be, you ask? Missouri. Ferguson, Missouri. Yep. Ferguson, Missouri. Holy shit, have you seen this? And, like I said, I was actually on my vacation from, most of last week and over this weekend, so to be honest, I'm not as up to speed as I would really totally like to be. But the latest thing that I saw today when checking it is that now the National Guard is coming in, and this is after shit's been happening for what, a week now? 10 days? Look, I'm not even going to pretend to know what exactly went down between the cop and Mr. Brown. I believe it's Michael Brown. But at this point, are we ever going to really know what exactly went down then? Probably not. But this is what I do know. One, that because of all the stuff that I've been talking about thus far here from the front row, and especially week one, this whole country is a Michael Brown or some other single tragedy from exploding. It's the veritable powder keg right now. Because so many people are hurting. And so many people are just eking out survival, living check to check or worse, or certainly living solely by the handouts of government. How long can it last? I throw out a number like 50 million people on food stamps. Well, think of that. 50 million people on food stamps. So how many are just above the food stamp level, right? Another 50? That's 100 million people living on shit. That's an average of 2 million people in every single state. And where are most of these people concentrated? In the cities, right? Look, you get this many people together that are hurting and just surviving shit, man, it doesn't take much to light the whole thing on fire. And I'm not saying that what happened was a little thing. But what can we expect? Just more and more of these. two, something we definitely need to spend an entire future show on. But the militarization of the police in America. You know, again, I know I don't know everything, but I do know that what you don't do during a time when tensions are high and people are pissed and frustrated is send in goddamn tanks. The tanks and hundreds of police officers dressed like they just stepped out of downtown Baghdad, armed to the teeth. Yeah, all right, cops, police, out there, I get it, all right? You don't want your ass shot. I totally get it. Hey, and if there's any police out there, who'd like to call in, 646-668-8756. I don't get it. You won't get shot either. I'm with you. But there's got to be a better way than MRAPs and flashbang grenades. And what's even more nuts to me, from what I've seen, they didn't even roll these things in for the looting. You know? So we had all this shit. We had the MRAPs and the rifles. 2 days of looting went on. That shit wasn't around. No, it wasn't until the peaceful protests were going on that they stepped in. And then the last thing I do know, and speaking of that, will be something that we do discuss later on in this show when we get to talking about waking up. But my fellow freaks, the other thing I know with every fiber of my being is you absolutely cannot listen or watch the mainstream media for any consistent, reliable source of true reporting. Yeah, blurbs come out here and there, and yes, sometimes they do tell the truth because it happens to suit them that time, but it's always with an agenda, and it's always with the strict control of ultimately just a few people. However, and this is what we're going to discuss a little bit later, there is true journalism still out there, and you can find it, online. For example, with this shit show in Ferguson, I highly recommend that you turn to Alex Jones and his website, Infowars.com. He has reporters on the ground there. Okay, he's got a guy like former Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs, who by himself is really a remarkable story. Excuse me. But we're not going to get into that right now. But it's interesting because he's actually just cutting his teeth right now as a journalist. Like I said, he was former staff sergeant, he's still a young guy, former staff sergeant who spent a lot of time in Iraq. But he's in Ferguson right now. And I know that this guy, given his background and given his history and given his story, you know what he's doing? He is reporting just straight from his heart. And this is, I forget what branch of the military, but I mean, you can tell when you like, especially if you watch him on YouTube and you watch one of his reports, this guy is not BSing you. Okay? So anyway, I'm not going to go too much more into the actual story of what's going on in Ferguson. Like I said, I need to catch up on it with myself. But stay tuned, because now that the National Guard is coming in, all bets are off, man. This thing could get a whole lot worse before getting better. And look at all the different stories you have right there under this one spotlight of this one story. You obviously have the original story yourself. You have the original story. Another killing at the hands of a police officer / brutality. And hey, this very well might have been, deserved, or however you want to put it. I mean, however, you do have that essence of that story, and of course, you got the race issue. You have the police state. You have freedom of speech and the right to protest going on. Like I said, go see what Joe Biggs and his reporting partner Jakari Jackson have reported on. Journalists are the ones getting tear gas and having red dots of rifle scopes on their chests while they're just trying to report. So how about your Second Amendment or martial law or the government's activity the last few years of openly preparing for mass civil unrest like this incident? What do they know? And is all this just a foreshadow of things to come? So, like I said, just with this one thing happening, you have tons of different angles to go at and look at. So, a lot of shit to think about and talk about here, freaks. Yet, what are most people going to do? They're going to get their 1 minute update from, Fox or their local news team. They're going to call and, oh, that's a shame. And then they're going to click over something up with the Kardashians or America's Got Talent. Oh, man, I get it. And it can't be this shit, the stuff I taught, that I bring here on at the front row. I get that it can't be 24/7. We all need our escapes, whether it's a ball game every now and then or something else. But quite frankly, I just can never understand if the something else is the Kardashian thing or America Has Talent. Honestly, let me just say this unequivocally. If you were watching one of those shows or something similar, you're fucking stupid. Period. You're an asshole and really just a ridiculous waste of human life that should do us all a favor by filling the tub, plugging in a hairdryer, and jumping in with it to fry from the inside out. Okay? You might think I'm joking there, but I'm not. Sorry. No, actually, I'm not sorry. Do it. Do it now. Or try this. Why don't you go buy a big block of ice, right? Like a really big-ass 10, 20-pound block of ice. Now, make a noose, tie it up, and put the other end around your neck while you stand on that block of ice. And just stand there as that block of ice melts, thinking about just how fucking stupid you are and what a goddamn waste of time your life has been. Too much? A little over the top there with a suicide request. Funny thing is, really, all I want to do is spread the love, Really, I want to love people, be kind and generous and all that shit, but honestly, just too many freaks out there making this really hard to do. I mean, how do you talk to someone who is tuning in to the Kardashians and giving one shit about their stupid life? I don't know. I really don't. I don't know if anyone listening right now is a Kardashian watcher. But I'll open I'll open the phone lines to you. But you know what? I had to go and look up. I watch very, very little, regular cable TV, I guess, or regular mainstream TV. So I had to go on Comcast.com to find out what's actually playing these days, and I clicked on TV shows, and it was sorted by most popular. And the Kardashian show was one of the top shows. And I actually wrote down, because here is the description for the next upcoming episode, okay? Here it is. When Chloe starts hanging with new pals and a new guy, Kim and Courtney try to find out what's happening. Then, Chris can't accept that Kim and Kanye want to plan their wedding without her help. The National fucking Guard is to be rolled out in an American city, and we could be on the verge of a freaking race war. And someone needs to tune in to find out why Chris can't accept that Kim and Kanye want to plan their wedding without her help? Oh, are you fucking kidding me here? So again, Kardashian fans, that number is 646-668-8756. And I have decided that if you call in and, you are one of these fans, just give me your address because, honestly, I'm going to buy the ice. I'll buy the hairdryer and fill the tub. Oh, shit. Anyway, hey, I'm going to wrap up the scuttlebutt and my little rant on Ferguson County. I just pointed out that I actually did read a good article this morning. It actually came from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Yeah. And I believe it was on time.com. So, like I said, hey, there's nuggets that can be found out there in mainstream media, and this was one of them. And I'm going to leave it at that. But I recommend that you look it up. I assume if you just put in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Ferguson County, it'll pop up for you. Hey, anyway, before we actually do get into waking up, I did want to put a bow on last week's discussion about 9/11 and the Fed, And so obviously, as it turned out, I should have just made it 2 shows, right? And we definitely bit off a little bit more than we can chew here in the front row. Live and learn, huh? But, front row is still very much a work in progress here. But I really did want, and I hope I did at least, set the connection between the Fed and the tragedy that was 9/11, even if I, didn't, maybe, fully lay out the facts for 9/11, in fact, being an inside job. But, 9/11, of course, is just another example of why you got to turn off the Mockingbird mainstream media. Reporting the whole damn day about multiple explosions and getting that from their own reporters on the ground, from firefighters, police, first responders, everybody. And by 9/12, September 12th, there was nothing on this. Not one follow-up into the multiple explosions. It was on to Osama bin Laden. And even when the scumbag mouthpiece for NIST, the National Institution of Standards and Technologies, who conducted the test as to why the towers collapsed, but when they got up and said they never investigated or tested for explosives because there was no evidence of them. It was here. If the mainstream media they just let it slide. So what do you mean there was no evidence of them? But besides the hundreds of people stating the fact that they heard multiple explosions? I mean, besides that evidence, you're right. I guess outside of that, there wasn't much. And there's actually a really great quote by Dan Rather, of all freaking people. But he was asked about the reporting on kind of 9/11 and the atmosphere in general around that time. And he said, quote, "There was a time in South Africa that people would put flaming tires around the people's necks if they dissented. And in some ways, the fear is that you will be necklaced here. You'll have a flaming tire, a lack of patriotism put around your neck. Now it's that fear that keeps journalists from asking the toughest questions." End quote. Just think about that shit for a minute. That's fucking heavy. Dan Rather? I mean, this guy's about as high up on the journalist food chain that, you can get, or certainly he was at one point. Necklaced with flaming tires, a lack of patriotism. Wow. So anyway, like I said, let's try to put a bow on this. And I'm not going to introduce much new here, but I kind of want to condense it and consolidate it so that hopefully this, taken with the fact and the connection between and with the Federal Reserve, again, more to get you and motivate you to do the research yourself. And hopefully, hate to keep talking about my vacation this week, but unfortunately my internet while I was on vacation sucked. And I was never able to, I tried to upload last week's episode to YouTube, and it just would have taken 3 days at the speed I had. So when we're done here tonight, I have 2 shows to upload to YouTube, and again, I know I've said it before, but I will keep saying it. As I put them on YouTube, it's just a better place where I can put in links and references and all that information. And, you know, I can include things such as books and documentaries that you can check out that, you know, like I said when I started the 9/11 talk, there's not much I can say that hasn't been said already by a number of people and in great detail. I just think my job here is to bring that light to you. So anyway, as far as 9/11 is actually concerned, and all the things that indicate why it was not Osama bin Laden and 19 hijackers armed with box cutters. First of all, you had your warnings. Okay? You had warnings all over the place from the minute that GW took office. Countries and agents for the FBI, for the CIA, were all screaming at the top of their lungs that something is happening. Okay? You have all the bullshit that, you know, precedes 9/11. Not just the immediate, but going back years and a decade, if not more, of our involvement with Al-Qaeda, our funding of them, with Osama bin Laden, all those ties. You had insider trading happening and people profiting from the events that went down on 9/11, and that this insider trading obviously occurred before 9/11. So all an indication that there were plenty of people that knew 9/11 was coming, and certainly that there were people that were not flying or changed their plans that day to not fly, to not go into New York. And then certainly probably the biggest pre-9/11 damning evidence is Operation Able Danger, where the Pentagon did not tell the FBI about a number of the hijackers that were known to be in this country. Locations, everything about them known. So, you know, what happened? Just that day we stopped following them or something? Or, you know, I mean, again, they just didn't get up one day and said, let's do this. They had to plan and prep for this thing. And actually, what's the guy's name? Shit, now I'm going to forget this. There's an actor, James, who was that thing? Sorry, I can't remember. But he was he was on a flight like in the summer of that year, and he noticed, you know, a couple of suspicious guys, right? And he ended up telling the stewardess or someone, and, you know, not much happened. But then after 9/11 went down and they showed the picture, that famous picture of all 19 of them, he noticed that 2 of them were the guys on the plane. So he saw them, doing their trial run or something. And that's the point I'm trying to make here, is that we knew they were in this country. And they're planning it. Money's coming in. People are helping them. They're taking flying lessons that we know about and doing test runs on airplanes. And then when you combine that, all that pre-knowledge and all that with that day, the carrying out of drills and exercises and war games that did 2 things. Number one, they really hindered and depleted our defense ability to respond to an attack. Okay, so when there's all these warnings and things that we know about, again, the last thing you're going to do is leave yourself totally defenseless. They were flying planes to Canada and the northern part of the country, out over the Atlantic, leaving us very vulnerable. And they did this despite all these warnings. And then when you talk about the other aspect is that these war games completely confused the people that would normally be, taking charge during a hijacking or a lost plane or one that wasn't responding. Things like false blips, hundreds of false blips on the radar screen for the people at the FAA and those things. And then, the first plane hits at 8:42. You would think then, all right, well, let me back up. At 8:15, Flight 11 goes dark, stops communicating. And that's technically when we're supposed to go into action, right? And our history and the whole program of our defenses is set up that way. Okay, you don't respond, your transponder goes off, anything goes awry, within a minute, fighters are getting scrambled. Okay? So that happened at 8:15. You would think at that point they might say, all right, cut the war games, whatever. Or maybe not even cut the war games. Let's get the false blips off the screen. No. They didn't stop the war games and the drills and the exercises until after the Pentagon was hit. Like an hour and 15 minutes after Flight 11, after 3 buildings were hit with planes. That's when they decided to stop the drills. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. And then just top all that off with the fact. You want to play around with the time a little bit? Oh, be my guest. But certainly, by 8:40, when the first plane hit the building, okay, and we knew other planes were also suspect, 15 minutes, any plane in America should be able to have an escorted fighter. And at the very minimum, we went an hour. And you can really make the case for an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes that there were no fighters. How was that possible? How? You had, speaking of possible, excuse me one second, absolutely impossible flying by the hijackers. Pilot after pilot, commercial, military, has come on and stated emphatically that so many different aspects of what they did that day were near impossible to impossible for guys like them. for totally seasoned commercial and or military pilots. The maneuver that Hani Hanjour pulled to hit the Pentagon where he hit it and how he hit it. You know, most will tell you that plane would have fell right out of the sky. There's no way. There's absolutely no way. And with how close he flew to the ground approaching the Pentagon, no way. No way. And really just even with the towers themselves, right? And I don't have exactly who it was that was saying this, but, you know, again, it was a completely verified stud pilot. And the flight allowed, the first plane that hit, right, was going like 540 miles an hour. And he said, you have no idea how hard it is to fly at that, you know, well, number one, let me back up. That's about 100 miles over max operating speed for this Boeing, okay? So chances are, very good chance, that the plane would have started malfunctioning because of that. But with that aside, he's like, you have no idea how hard it is to fly a plane like this. The slightest touch of the controls will send you, you know, out. But he said just to that, the towers, as big as they were to us, to actually hit it with a plane going at those speeds is a very, very difficult thing to do. And again, for the most seasoned commercial jet pilot or military guy. You know, he's like, that's a very, very small target. And he compared it, and I thought this was a great comparison. He's like, all right, try pulling into your driveway from a couple 100 feet away. Try pulling in your driveway, and hopefully there's a turn in there. I think he actually said the Jiffy Lube thing, you know, how you have to usually go around, curve around back, and then go in, you know, into the bays in there. I think that's actually how he said it. But, you know, try doing that at 150 miles an hour. And then try doing it with a Mack truck. And try not to hit the sides of the garage or anywhere else. Try to drive it right on through the bay. It's like that's the analogy that we're talking about here. So both these guys, even if they had licenses or whatnot, we're 100% dead on accurate when they aim for the towers and the Pentagon. There are no pics or videos of any of the hijackers boarding the actual planes. We have one still photo of Atta and his buddy getting on in Maine on the connecting flight. And I know that, you know, on the morning of September 11th, the security certainly wasn't what it is today. But there was still security, and video cameras abound. And we have never seen one picture of them in the actual airports where they boarded these planes or getting on the planes themselves. Not one. They're not on the manifests of any of the planes. Not only that, no Muslim names are on any of the manifests. And then when you have people, okay, so you got the Hani Hanjour doing the impossible flight into the Pentagon. So a lot of people, with that fact, and the fact that the hole created didn't look like it came from a Boeing. None of the debris that was actually left around looked like it came from a Boeing. So people said, well, what the hell hit the Pentagon? And there was 85 video cameras around from a hotel and the gas station all around the area that would have caught exactly what hit the Pentagon. And the FBI and the government have refused to release them. Why? Why? They could clear it up. they did end up releasing like 5 seconds of video footage, right? Just prior to the explosion. There is absolutely no way you can tell if it is a plane or not. There's no way. But again, it comes to why is the video confiscated? And why, after 13 years, are we not allowed to see it? Is this national security of some sort? I don't fucking think so. And then think about just all the other anomalies. Black boxes, 8 of them, 2 for each plane, made to be indestructible. Only 2 survived, and of that 2, only bits of information was retrievable from them. This never happens. Planes fly into mountains, find the black box. Planes go down over the ocean, we find the black box. Planes get shot down out of the sky, we find the black box. 9/11, don't find the black box. And I have to repeat the fact that at the Twin Towers we found none of the 4 black boxes. Yet we did find the paper passport that had to be on the person of the hijacker of one of the planes that hit the towers. Not folks. Right. In New York, 3 buildings were destroyed by 2 planes. Building 7 is obvious by looking at it, controlled demolition. By their own admission, came down at free fall speed. Free fall speed, folks. Again, you have to think of what that means. No resistance. Fire cannot do that. And then, obviously, with the other 2 buildings, again, I'm not going to get into this. Oh, well, there was jet fuel. And no. Go back and look, folks. Just look at them collapsing. Does it look like a fire brought those things down? Steel girders weighing tons were getting launched hundreds of feet across the street. Cars on the street blocks away were melted. Melted. As I said earlier, hundreds of reports of multiple explosions. The buildings just didn't collapse, they were pulverized into dust. There was molten steel. They were pulling out of the rubble. On fire, liquid, molten, looks like lava, steel that they pulled out of the rubble months after 9/11. The shit was still on fire. That's how hot it was. At the Pentagon and at Shanksville, you had 2 planes vaporized. Vaporized. No discernible debris. Just when does this happen in why are the plane crashes on 9/11 different from every other plane crash that's ever happened? Why are the towers that came down, why are those fires different from every other fire that's happened to buildings? Why? Why did this have to be a day of such firsts and a day that contradicts physics? The plane on the Pentagon, they tell us, right? It was so hot that it melted. Everything melted. It was vaporized. Yet, if you go back and look at the pictures, it punched through. You know, the Pentagon's got the rings, right? it punched through a hole into the third ring. So through like 6 walls. And it punched the hole out the other side, so it was obviously intact enough to punch that hole out on the other side. But then it vaporized. No wings, no motors, no nothing. No luggage, no seats, no nothing. In Shanksville, not only that, but, according to the story, all these phone calls and the whole let's roll thing took place on the plane. Problem is, folks, you couldn't make phone calls from that altitude in 2001. You can't even do it now. You still can't make cell phone calls at that altitude and going those speeds. And it's been proven. People have gotten on a plane, tried their cell phone at 10,000, 15, 20, 30. They all get dropped. They all get dropped. They were having 10-minute conversations, some of these, allegedly. Then you have the 9/11 Commission itself. Underfunded, set up to fail. Why did it take George Bush over 400, it was like 440, 440 days just to say, we'll have an investigation? When every other big thing in history gets done within a week. Pearl Harbor, a couple of days. JFK getting shot, couple of days. The NASA space shuttle, 3-4 days. 9/11, 440. And we budgeted like a tenth of what was spent on Clinton getting his BJ from Monica. And then George and Dick would only testify together, not under oath, and whatever they said could never be told to the public. Yeah, okay. There's a free society for you. And again, with the commissioners, 6 of 10 have since come out on record, one way or another, saying that they were lied to, there was a cover-up, and the lies have been, some of them have been exposed, and like the stand-down order with NORAD, and finally you have the whistleblowers that have come out since. That I mentioned last week, and that's where I really started to get rushed, but Sibel Edmonds. Look her up. She was a translator for the FBI. Has come out and said that we had intimate working relationship with Osama bin Laden right up until 9/11. The incredible testimony of Richard Grove. Incredible testimony, so detailed and especially regarding the insider trading. You have to look up Richard Grove and his testimony. And then just all the way down the line, whether it's people that were at Building 7, say, and being told that the building was going to blow up. It's coming down hours before it did. And right on down the line with whistleblowers. Barry Jennings, the guy who was trapped in Building 7, him and Michael Hess, 2 people supposedly alone in Building 7, or for the most part, they couldn't find anyone else. Saw an explosion in Building 7. Was rocked. This is Building 7, folks. Not hit by a plane. And then, of course, lastly, the post-9/11 world. I had mentioned last week about the project for the New American Century and the plans that the neocons wanted to implement and by their own words said they couldn't unless there was a catalyzing catastrophic event like a new Pearl Harbor. And lo and behold, they get that to carry out all their plans. The Patriot Act, Afghanistan. George Bush on record saying by March of 2002, I don't care where Osama bin Laden is. He said that. I don't care where he is. Doesn't matter to me. So, there you have it, freaks. There is my bow on 9/11. And I'm sure we'll be tiptoeing through it again down the road. But if all that stuff just combined and listed like that, if that doesn't make you stop and say, you know, what the fuck, I'm not sure I know what will. So, anyway, we're going to move on to waking up in general. It's 8 o'clock. This is the Front Row at the Freak Show. I am your host, Steve Crafts. The number is 646-668-8756. I haven't seen the little phone ring yet, so let's see if we can get that done, huh? Let's call in. Somebody out there. Come on. I don't want to beg, but I will. All right, so, par usual, I'd like to take another little break here, and I think I alluded it to earlier. I actually have the full interview of George Carlin when he mentions Front Row at the Freak Show, you know, in his whole quote there. But it's the whole interview. And you know what? It's not me slapping Laugh Riot funny. But I think it you know, George is such a big influence on me and me personally anyway. And I think this really gives a great insight into George, the mind that he was, and what he was thinking. This is definitely later in his life. So anyway, let's roll that now. And it's what I call George Carlin, the Freak Show interview.
There was a long piece in there called The Planet is Fine, the People are Fucked. We'll be gone. Dinosaurs had their chance. There was an age of reptiles. Now it's the age of primates. And who knows? Maybe it'll be the insects next. It's not up to us. It's not divinely ordained. We're here on chance, and we're going to go away. And the planet will heal. The planet will heal because that's what it does. It heals itself. It's a self-healing organism. It changes and grows. It'll incorporate all of our dead cities into itself, and it will become something else, but it will still be going around the sun for at least a few more billion years or whatever. So this whole thing, we have to save the planet by not putting diapers in the landfill. That's too short-sighted. That doesn't do anything. You have to change yourself, and we'll never do that because the dollars now, everybody wants a dollar and a toy. Everybody's got a cell phone that'll make pancakes and rub their balls, so nobody wants to rock the boat. Nobody wants to change. Don't change anything. And we're in a nice downward glide. I think we squandered great gifts. I think humans were given great, great gifts. Walking upright, binocular vision, opposable thumb, large brain, making tools. Make tools, large brain, make better tools. Talk, have to link language. You take this, put in here. We learned language, brain got bigger, language. We grew. We had great gifts, and we gave it all up for both for both money and God. God and mammon, both. We gave it up to the high priests. It's your job. God's will. That's what they say. People say it's God's will. That means God can do anything he wants, so why pray? They say, you pray for something. Okay, he didn't answer my prayers. Well, it's God's will. Well, if it's God's will, why did I even pray in the first place? He's going to do what he wants anyway. We gave it all up to superstition, primitive superstition, primitive shit. With invisible man in the sky looking down, keeping track of what we do, make sure we don't do the wrong thing. If we do, he puts us in hell and we burn forever. That kind of shit is very limiting. It's very limiting for this brain we have. So we keep ourselves limited, and then we want a toy and a gizmo and gold, and we want shiny things, and we want something to plug in that'll make big things for us. And all that shit is nothing. It's nothing. We gave it all up. And Americans, who also had great gifts, when you take the theory of democratic rule, self-government, okay, they started off wrong. They owned slaves. They didn't let women vote. They didn't let people who didn't own land vote. Fine. They got off on the wrong foot. But the ideas were good. But we fucking blew that. We polluted it. We polluted it with this stuff, things, material goods, games, gizmos, toys, gadgets, having possessions. I got a bigger truck. He says, she is truck. It's bigger than mine. I'm getting a new truck. Here's a big truck. Oh, I'm getting that one. That's what you got a video in it? Your DVD too? You don't have a DVD. I got a DVD. You know. Oh, please. Whatever happened? And all of that is what happened, you know. And that's why I'm divorced from it now. I see it from a distance. I give myself a divorce. I said, George, emotionally you have no stake in this. You don't care one way or another. So watch it. Have fun. You know what? I say it this way. When you're born in this world, you're given a ticket to the freak show. And when you're born in America, you're given a front row seat. And some of us get to sit there with notebooks. And I'm a notebook kind of, huh? Oh my God, did you see that? Did you see what he just... And I watch the freak show, and I get my notes, and I make up stuff about it, and I talk about the freaks. And the freaks are all humans, and they're like me, and they're all the same. We're all the same. I'm not better. I'm not different. I'm just apart now. I'm separate. I'm over here because I put myself out of the mix. I don't have a stake in the outcome. I'm not a cheerleader for a given outcome now. Oh, they say if you scratch a cynic, you'll find a disappointed idealist. And I would admit that somewhere underneath all of this, there's a little flicker of a flame of idealism that would love to see it all change. But it can't happen that way. And incremental change, it just seems like the pile of shit is too deep.
Wow, man, huh? The pile of shit is too deep. You know, I brought it up in the first episode, and you know, George's kind of slant there, and that, you know, gave it to you flat out from his mouth, right? And and where my attitude and is a little different. And you know, it's funny because what just stuck out at me there, you know, I got no stake in the game now. I'm just a cheerleader, you know. And you know, it's weird. I know George had a kid, you know, and you know, so I don't know what that aspect. I think by the time he had said that quote, and certainly his daughter had, you know, was, you know, kind of grown. But, you know, I got 2 kids right now that I just spent that main vacation with, and 8 and 6 years old. And so that's my stake in the game. You know, and so anyway, that was, and I think is, a good intro here to, you know, start talking about waking up. And, you know, kind of defining that, and what is it? Why? Why do we need to wake up? You know, maybe we don't. According to George, the pile of shit is too big. But you see, even with that, and you know, my notes, I was going to bring this up a little bit later, but I think at the very least, waking up and pointing this stuff out now as much as we can, as loud as we can, as often as we can, maybe we cannot prevent the collapse or the complete decay of America, the American way, the American dream, whatever you want to, however you want to, categorize it. Maybe we can't. But certainly, I don't think with whatever is going to happen and however it's going to go down that all humanity is going to be extinct. At least I sure as shit hope not. But, so, or I should say, how do we rebuild afterwards? Right? What comes in place if there is a collapse? Or, sorry, when there's a collapse. And I think by waking up now, getting as many people awake now and aware, that can help us rebuild with those things in mind and knowing the mistakes that we made. And, you know, I actually, just now that I'm thinking about it too, and with how it kind of went down last week with not having enough time, you know, I know, like, I mean, here I am talking about waking up, right? And there's so many directions I can go on and so many different tangents and, you know, which way and what way. But I just started to think about this, that I actually kind of like the rhythm that maybe this is naturally kind of bringing, you know, and that is, you know, bring up, you know, something that, you know, the second half of the show, towards the end, what have you, and then finish it up next week or bring a different slant in or bring a different angle in. And, you know, thus spending kind of 2 weeks' time on one issue. And then next week, you know, bring in something else, but finish up my waking up rant. And so with that kind of said, you know, what I want to do now is kind of talk about, you know, what is waking up, and then really get into and try to give you some good resources, people and alternative media sites to kind of help that process. And, you know, talk about a few of them in detail. And then, you know, perhaps next week get into more of, you know, the methods and the way that you know, the big club and the powers that be are doing things, you know, besides obviously the Federal Reserve. But what are the other ways that they are keeping us asleep, basically? Right? Because if you're not awake, you're asleep. Or you're just willfully ignoring it, I guess. But, so I think that's what we're going to do. And, you know, it's funny. Because I started off, you know, obviously talking about like last week and this week, you know, just time and how hard, you know, I'm finding doing this podcast is. I love it. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love doing this, and I am looking forward every week to putting it together. But, you know, it's very much a part of what this is all about, right? Because of the way that we have constructed our society. You know, I mean, when I talk about Ferguson, right, and the 50 million people on food stamps and maybe 100 million that are living just above that, okay? Well, what woke me up? Yeah, 9/11 was a big part of it. Absolutely. Definite watershed moment for me. But the other thing that happened was that when I was married, my ex-wife and I, we had to declare bankruptcy. And I won't get all into that, you know, but I had some medical shit go down. and basically a lot of surgeries, nothing really, life-threatening, but certainly life-changing, and a lot of surgeries in a short period of time. And, what did that ultimately mean? Less work. I work on commissions only and whatever. So, but all that time down meant less work and less money coming in, right? But the bottom line was, at the end of the year, even given my, given my downtime and the less income coming in, me and my wife at the time were still able to make close to $100,000 a year as a couple. All right, and I'm fully aware that is not a ton of money, but isn't that the problem? And that's was something that really slapped me in the face, like, wow, $100,000 a year, and by no means living in any way extravagant. All our furniture, secondhand, clothes, bargain basement, secondhand for the kids, without a doubt. No vacations. We didn't take vacations. If we did, it was to, the family place in Maine. Frugal on pretty much everything. Yet it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to make it. And my dad, right, just my father, one generation removed, never made more than $100,000. Maybe towards the tail end of his days with stocks and everything else, but I mean, for the most of his working life, never. And probably more like 50 to 75 the whole time. My mother didn't have to work, never had to work. I had 6 kids, helped some or all of college for them all, was able to afford a second vacation home, retire right around the age of 65 comfortably. That was, I'm not talking 100 years ago, folks. I mean, he retired just 15 years ago. A little more, give or take, but so yeah, that was a wake-up call, like, so again, when I talk about the 50 million on food stamps and the ones now you add up the people like me, just trying to work hard, make a living, their spouses as well. Obviously, you want to have a couple of kids, but what do you need to do? If you're both working, you have to put them in daycare. Oh, well, that's $2,000 off the month, off the top every month. I remember having the talk with my father about the bankruptcy and all that, and he just couldn't understand it. No way is that possible to make that amount of money and be declaring bankruptcy. We were about 10, 15 grand short every year. Where'd that go? On the credit cards. Again, folks, I'm going to tie, this is back into what I said at the beginning. I'm just being real here, man. I hope you appreciate this. So again, in going back to George, I don't have a stake, and I'm looking at my 2 kids like, well, what the hell is it going to be for them? My son and daughter wants to get married. Where are they both going to have to work 2 jobs to maybe be able to afford to have a kid and rent some 500 square foot apartment, making, $200,000 a year, and it's not enough? I mean, we were in, like, when you hear this 1% versus the 99%, we were in the top 20, of the world. Not enough. Not even close to enough. But, anyway, My guess here is that if you're listening to me, that you must be somewhat awake or waking up if you're tuning in here. I'm not quite sure a stone-cold, sleeping zombie sheep is dialing up the front row. I get that. But just in case, or, again, if you're just kind of, the waking up process is a process. It's just that. I mean, it took me a few years, and I'm obviously still learning shit, but what's it mean to be awake? As you've heard me say, and it's our tagline and everything else, conspiracy, maybe. Screwed, definitely. And, that's true. The big reason I started this podcast is because I believe and feel that so many in the alternate media and documentaries, right, they focus on the big club. But you've probably heard of other names for it, the powers that be, the unseen hand, the shadow government, the New World Order, the Illuminati. And my point is that you don't have to believe in any of those or that exists to see that things are in fact going down the toilet. However, if you're like me and you need to know, I got wind of 9/11. Okay, well, let's check this out. And certainly would, declare I knew why we were bankrupt because we didn't make enough money, but, that really bothered me. Like, shit, we're two honest people working hard, making money. They swallowed up, man, swallowed up. But if you need to know why this shit is so crazy, well, I think that's when you start waking up, and becoming awake and finding out that, you know what? It pretty much all is a conspiracy. And by saying that, I don't mean that everything that happens, is a conspiracy, at least as far as how it's defined and getting used these days, in the conspiracy theory. But that there is a larger, grander, by design, that there is a top of the pyramid, and that very few things, either currently or in the past, have happened truly by accident, and rather they have been directed and designed by this elite few. And, I want to state up front here, I am by no means making the claim that I have this all figured out. Quite the contrary. Because it seems like it's one of those things that the more you learn, there's so much more to learn. The rabbit hole, so to speak, keeps going and going and going and going. And what I want is all you freaks listening to me now and the ones that join me in the future to go along on this ride with me and figure out this shit together. Let's hope that we still got the time to do that, because I have no idea how much time we have. 5, 10 years? Month? But, go right down history, folks. Go right down through it. And it's littered with people and societies and nations and everything else that eventually came to an end. So, you know what? It can't happen here. America is something different, above it, incapable of it. Last week, what did I do with it? Sorry. Last week I actually said that for this show I had some quotes. And let me just give them again real quick, because I think they're important in the waking up process. Again, it was Dwight Eisenhower on his way out the presidential seat that said, "In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex." End quote. It was JFK who said, "For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on inflation instead of on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations." End quote. And it was Woodrow Wilson who said, quote, "Since I entered politics, I have chiefly had men's views confided to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the U.S. in the fields of commerce and manufacturing are afraid of somebody, are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it." Well, let me hit you now with another one. And this one comes from David Rockefeller. And so it says, I'm kind of getting into our intro of waking up. And again, next week I want to kind of bring out the players and their playbook a little bit more. But this was from, hopefully you'll have a little idea of who Rockefeller is, right? This is not the Grand Poobah, that was, but he was the one who kind of picked up the ball from his daddy, and I think the bastard's still alive. But he wrote in his, he had an autobiography, his memoirs, and you can find this direct quote in there. Quote, "Some even believe we, Rockefeller family, are a part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it." It's that question again, What else do you need? And trust me, folks, the documentation of the big club is vast, and next week I'll pep you with a shitload more quotes, all to the same effect. But how many more do you need? I think the bottom line is that all the documentation about the big club is out there, and in their own freaking words. And their plans are known by their own admissions. Have you ever heard of the Bilderberg Group? Well, the Bilderberg Group is a group that meets every year, different location around the world. And I'm sure there's a consistent few names on the list every single year, but it's also very much a bit of a revolving cast, so say 100 go every year, give or take, out of, 200 or 300 possible people, right? So you have people that go 1 year, not the next, go, once a decade, that sort of thing. But anyway, this has been going on since 1954, okay? So since 1954, 100 plus of the world's most elite, powerful people, and I'm talking heads of state, former heads of state, and politicians of every nature, and top, the most powerful people at the tops of all the most powerful corporations and fields of industry. So these guys meet in secret. Well, their meeting is secret, and now, it's finally come out. So they started meeting in 1954. The mainstream press still does not cover it, okay? The alternative media, again, like the guy I mentioned earlier, Alex Jones, big, he was on this, 15 years ago, the Bilderberg Group, and a couple of other guys. So in those circles, it's been, now pretty well known for 20, 25 years. But just think of that, folks, okay? You have 100 of the most elite, powerful people meeting in the world. Now just ask yourself, what if, say, every owner from every major sports team met for 3-4 days in a hotel somewhere, and they wouldn't allow the press in and never spoke of what they talked about? Don't you think that the press would be all over this, all over them, talk about collusion, everything else within their sports? Why are you meeting? They would hound them. What if the 100 top actors and directors of Hollywood all got together and met for 3 days and had a private meeting, and no one from the press was allowed in? And seriously, not only that, folks, these days, I mean, if you check it out and go back over the years now of the footage from the people that go there now, I mean, it's kind of a scene now, in the alt media world. I mean, like this year, people start getting kicked out of the hotel that they're doing this whole thing at, like 2 days before. And the security is, just over the top. I mean, there's helicopters, there's Secret Service, there's, you can't get within 10 feet of the place. Still everyone's back there with the cameras rolling, trying to get a glimpse of people getting out of their cars. So anyway, the alt media people have finally put enough pressure and enough spotlight on these guys where they put up some bullshit website, and this is what we're going to discuss this year, and yeah, right. And they give the attendance list, But that is good and valuable information by yourself. But I mean, it's the year before Obama became president, him and Hillary snuck out. There was a big thing. Where did they go? They both went to Bilderberg. And Clinton's been there, and all, senators, all this stuff. But again, just goes to drive the point home about the big club and the few controlling the rest of us. So anyway, when I was getting ready for tonight's show, I actually, another thing about as far as the time commitment goes, freaks, well, I'm really trying to get this to be, a more top-notch operation, if you will. And but before I did the podcast last year, for 6-8 months, I kept up a blog, and it was just getting everything written. For me, it's just much easier to talk here, as opposed to each week trying to do this and then put it in written words where it's grammatically correct and every other fucking thing. My spell check was working overtime. That is not my strong suit. But anyway, I actually borrowed a little bit from it in week one of the podcast, but I had, getting back to the time, sorry. It is certainly something that, again, when I have how much time I have in the week to say, make this episode, what I'm trying to do is revamp the blog, so every week that'll be a nice home for this podcast and as a springboard in general for waking up. Like I said, I want to get to tonight a lot of the players and the alt media people that you can go to. But actually, if you go to frontrow@thefreakshow.com and look on my blog, there's, a lot there already. I just haven't done anything to it. And about a year. So, but I got to get to revamping that. So I, was messing around with it this week, and it's one of the entries that I had, one of the essays or whatever you want to call them, very much relates to this whole thing about waking up and the who's and the what's and the whys for about it. But I had so one of the things was I used Animal House, and I thought of that last speech, or that final speech by Bluto, how it kind of hit me that with a few small changes, it could have been the speech for Americans and us to hear about breaking out of our zombie mode and kicking the ass of the bankers and the politicians and these other people. And check it out. It's pretty good. I actually kind of like it. But anyway, here's some of the stuff I wrote in relation to that. With that backdrop of the Animal House. I said, let's face it. Like the boys over at Delta Tau Chi, we just like to party too much. After World War II, the good times rolled in, and we as Americans wrapped a sheet around ourselves and had a 50-year toga party. And we didn't bother to check who was bringing the beer or how they paid for it, just that we had it. However, it's all too clear that the party has ended. Look, in a nutshell, what has happened here? A few crooked-ass, purely evil sons of bitches have taken control of, well, everything. That's the problem. World domination plans didn't go out the window with Hitler. They just got smarter about how to do it. They hid behind corporations and wore suits and ties instead of a uniform. They've been buying up everything and consolidating everything, stacking all the chips in their favor. They've been systematically bankrolling and then bankrupting countries across the board, and guess which phase we're in now here in America? Of course, America is a special case. We ain't no Venezuela. And unlike the others, all us freaks, or a good enough amount, bring guns to the party. So they needed to distract us, and showed up at the party uninvited, but brought a bunch of cute girls, cocaine, and pizza. We said, on in. Yeah, it's not bad. So that was my summation of, what kind of happened and why we got to this point of, zombieism, for lack of a better term. Why we are where we are, why we are not so awake. But I went on to talk about a little about, why it's so important to be awake. And I guess I'll just read it again. We are working more than ever, spending less quality time talking and being with our loved ones. And though some diseases have been cured or curtailed, others have exploded through the roof. Where's the 2-day work week? It's totally possible. Shit, a large majority of what we call work could be done away with almost altogether. It's a discussion for another day, but suffice it to say, it's not a pie-in-the-sky ideology. I never bought that whole, what would people's incentive to be to contribute if they didn't have to line. We only approach this seeing how people react to working at a shitty job and barely getting by versus getting a handout from daddy government. I prefer to wonder what society could be like if every individual were truly free to fully utilize their unique talents and imagination. We'd be busting down the other galaxy's doors. That's what we'd be doing. So yeah, folks, I mean, that's, tying this all into my personal experiences with time and, the reason for going bankrupt and how we're all just running around and just so very few of us are really living and have freedom. to do things that we really want, that we're wage slaves. And I like to think of the party that we could be having, like the 2-day work week or the 0-day work week. So we don't have to work as we know it. And so this is how we got to start thinking in order to wake up. You know, and got to stop just getting distracted and taking the easy route of plopping down on the couch and clicking on the fucking Kardashians. And again, and I'll say it again, most importantly, if the pile of shit is too high, and if and when we do collapse, I'd also argue that, look around, the collapse is happening. But if there is a, seminal event that we can point to, one day where we wake up and the stock market just drops 80%. Or one day we wake up and there is just no power. And that ensues for a lengthy period of time. One day we wake up and there's a bank holiday where you cannot get your money out. One day we wake up to another 9/11. All shit that is very, very high probability for. However, even if that day or that event is 10 years off, which I think is way too far, but even if it is, until then we are just circling the drain. So, I got about 14 minutes left here in this episode, and what I'd like to do, as I said, is talk about some of the good freaks out there, some of the good freaks to know and to learn. And did I say this already tonight? I think I did, about YouTube and getting the podcast up there, because, I really got to figure out how to, and once I get my blog up and started again, then certainly all this stuff, what I'm talking, whether it's, within the topic I'm talking about or just like this, I'm going to reel off some people and some different places that you can check out. Believe me, freaks, I'm working on it, so there is a place to go where, you don't have to hit rewind on my podcast or, write it down as I'm talking, so it'll all be documented and there for you. Let me just, 1 second, I just want to, so like I said, you can certainly go to it now. Good stuff on there, front row at thefreakshow.com. Well, those aren't coming up, huh? That's weird. Anyway, so, I haven't hit it for a while, but I am going to get back into updating that. I mean, the site's a pretty slick site, actually. WordPress blog. But, I have a page dedicated to 9/11, and then I have a page that's supposed to be, and there are some on there, called Good Freaking Documentaries, where I list stuff. Like right now I have 4, 8, 10 good documentaries that you can get into, and a page, Good Freaks to Know, about like stuff I'm going to talk about right now. So I've mentioned his name already, and he, I think has to be at the forefront of the alt media movement. Okay, Alex Jones. Really, this guy has woken up more people than, all Holiday Inns in America, all hotels, That joke didn't come out good, but you get what I'm saying. Alex Jones, Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.tv, Alex is a freaking crazy man. All right, he really is. And you know, he's got a lot of critics out there, believe me. But he's also got an unbelievable audience. I mean, on a daily basis, between he has a daily show Monday through Friday, 11 to 2 Central, and then Sundays 4 to 6. And you know, you can catch it on his website or on his you know, mobile phone app. You can catch it live, and certainly it's on and syndicated, you know, hundreds of markets across the country. So between that and then all the YouTube videos he puts out, Alex's reach is very far right now. And so again, I mean, any conversation about alternate media or whatever has to, I think, begin with Alex Jones. All right. It's a completely legitimate news organization. Okay. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, he's got boots on the ground in Ferguson, Missouri right now. Okay. And guys that aren't afraid to ask the real hard questions of the police or whoever it is, of the looters, you know. He has been very active recently in the open border that we have now in this country. And again, sending these guys down right to the border and asking the Border Patrol agents and all the people involved point blank what's going on, and breaking stories and breaking news at a pretty good clip. And you know, certainly when you go on his site, I mean, they put out articles. He's got a lot of contributing writers, and when they put out articles, everything is referenced. You can follow links until you're blue in the face. It's all backed up. It's all documented. Alex himself, you know, he's been doing this now 19, 20 years, so way ahead of the game. He was one of a couple of guys that actually predicted 9/11. He started talking about Osama bin Laden and an event happening in June of 2001. So he, a lot of the things he said. Now, one of his detractions, you know, he's a fearmonger because he does keep, you know, talking about collapse and all this other stuff. And there's an angle of that which is true. But I also think that, you know, if he doesn't, I mean, it's hard enough, obviously, to wake people up. If you don't come at it with some emergency and some urgency, you know, just forget about it at that point. All right. What else? What are a few others of his knocks? Well, you know, he sells a lot of his own products, and he obviously advertises those and pumps them during his podcast or his broadcast and everything else. Oh, he's just in it for the money. He, you know, all he wants to do, he's a selling whore. All this shit, you know. And to that I say, tell me a radio show guy out there who doesn't, right? They all, within their shows, advertise for companies. You know, it's just not their shit. And either that or they're having actual ads playing to sell you something. So, you know, he doesn't put a gun to your head and make you buy the shit, that's for sure. Some other knocks, you know, I already said the fear-mongering thing, and he does, at times, just go fucking crazy. He goes crazy on air. You could YouTube right now, Alex Jones and Piers Morgan. I mean, he went on the Piers Morgan show and freaked out. He totally freaked out. I should have uploaded that audio for that clip, but, you know, I should be playing that now. But he goes absolutely nuts, right? And, you know, that's a part of it. But the guy, he's real, and he's passionate. And you know what? In my opinion, this guy is the epitome of the American dream fulfilled. I mean, he started out 19, 20 years ago on public access radio and television in Texas. And he built it up to what he is today. I mean, that's impressive. And as far as I know, like any real beast and critic, like I haven't heard any Post employees coming out bashing him, or, things like that. So I've done my research. And the one other thing I'll say about Alex is I think a lot of people, and if you go on to look him up, investigate him, so many people take, 30 seconds of his 3-hour show and ridicule him. They set him up that way, or whatnot. Listening to Alex can be hard sometimes, but I feel now that I've listened to him pretty regularly and consistently for 2-3 years, that I have the good big picture. And I have caught other media people, Rachel Maddow, bold-faced lying about him, just making up shit that he says. So, again, ultimately, hey, I think it's a good thing that, hey, when people are talking about you and bashing you, when you think about the people who are doing it, it's probably a good sign. Okay? And real quickly now, because I want to hit some other names, but to finish up Alex, I already mentioned how he documents and everything, but if you go on his Infowars.com, free news site, you get all his news, the stories, all that, links. But then the Prison Planet TV is a paid thing, $6 a month. You can sign up to 10 of your friends, all right? But I shouldn't even say that, because I was going to say, on Prison Planet TV, he's got all his documentaries, of which he's made, there's like 60 on the site, but he's directly made probably, 10, 15 of them over the years. And fantastic documentaries, about the police state, about the rise of the police state, about 9/11, about the Obama deception, all these other things. But you can go on YouTube and get them all for free, okay? So I like to throw Alex my $6 every month, and again, for that you can have 10 other people. It's 10 other people that can listen at the same time. That's the max. So you could give it to 30 people as long as they're not all listening at the same time. So anyway, the next guy or whatever I want to get to is someone Alex talks about a lot, and has ended up being a part of my daily routine for news, and that's Drudge and the DrudgeReport.com. Okay, it's an absolute must go to, I think, for people that are waking up. It's the spot. Now it's weird, and it's such an enigma itself, because politicians and the like, they talk about Drudge. And I've never really figured it out. It's weird because they take this angle like he's actually reporting news, or like he's a reporter, as he was. But right now, his site, if you go on it, right, it's just 3 columns with about 15, 20 headlines in each column, and just all going to other columns. So, and his list of his his sources are everything from Alex Jones to ABC. So he is pulling and getting information from all over the internet and putting in some kind of, must be an algorithm or something that produces what actually makes it on his page. But you're just simply going to get stories here that you're not going to generally find and come across any other place. Like I said, they are all other places, so it is a little bit weird. But you have to go to the Drudge Report. He gets 50 million, 100 million, 500 million hits a month. It's through the roof, and there's a reason for that. So excellent place to get source knowledge and start. I got the app on my phone, and at the very least every day I'm trying to skim the headlines at Drudge to see what is being talked about. And now let's just kind of cruise through, and I want to actually, I don't know about next week or down the road, there's 2 other bigger guys, okay, One is named Stefan Molyneux, and the other is Peter Joseph with Zeitgeist. And I put them in this like trio with Alex Jones because number one, they're all very popular. Zeitgeist, if you haven't seen the movie or any three of the movies, and Peter Joseph with The Movement, I mean, it's been watched hundreds of millions of times. And, you know, so, and then you have this guy, Stefan Molyneux, which at least by his own accord is the, you know, world's most popular or viewed philosophy channel on YouTube. And he brings a very libertarian and pro-liberty and anti-big club stance. So, but anyway, what's interesting, and I'm running out of time here, but all three have different kind of end results, you know, and it's very interesting. I'm going to have to pick that up next week. But a few other guys, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week, okay? I'm not even going to mention them because I won't do them justice, but we'll pick it up next week here on the front row at The Freak Show.